Hello everyone, welcome to Delusion. I'm Sunshine. In this interconnected age of the internet, we often experience a peculiar illusion, believing that all the news in the world flows at our fingertips, and that we empathize with every corner of the globe. But let me ask you to reflect for a moment when you sit comfortably on your couch, watching the news about turmoil and suffering in distant places. What is your reaction? Do you sigh in sympathy, or do you immediately turn your attention to the next short video? Behind this sense of empathy, is there perhaps a terrifying mindset of being mere spectators? We often assume that civilization is an unbreakable shield, believing that savagery and bloodshed are far removed from us. Yet if one day the neighbor you've always known suddenly picks up a machete, if the streets once protected by law become a scene of hell, and if your only barrier is the door of a 4-star hotel, what would you do? This faint glimmer of light forced to emerge in the darkest times, this desperate struggle when civilization completely collapses, is exactly where the protagonist of the film we're discussing begins his journey. In an era devoid of heroes, he was forced to become one. The film we are talking about today captures one of humanity's most heartbreaking 100 days and showcases the most extraordinary professional moments of an ordinary man. This is Hotel Rwanda. This film was released in 2004 and directed by Terry George. Terry George, originally a screenwriter, excels in tackling heavy themes rooted in real political backgrounds. His earlier acclaimed work, In the Name of the Father, showcased his exceptional storytelling skills. In Hotel Rwanda, he uses a stark yet powerful cinematic style to reconstruct the horrific genocide that occurred in Rwanda in 1994. The lead actor, Don Cheadle, earned an Oscar nomination for Best Actor for his performance in this film. His portrayal is incredibly nuanced, vividly illustrating the transformation of a shrewd hotel manager as he confronts a crisis. Interestingly, to prepare for the role, Don Cheadle spent several days in intense conversations with the real-life figure, Paul Rusesabagina, even learning his walking rhythm and methods of handling everyday matters. This movie is not just a witness to history but also serves as a profound test of the boundaries of human decency. The story is set in Rwanda during the early 1990s. The protagonist, Paul, is the assistant manager at the luxurious Mille Collines Hotel, which is Belgian-owned. Paul is an extremely clever and polished businessman who knows how to win over military and political elites with top-notch cigars and expensive cognac, all in an effort to ensure a comfortable and secure life for his family. Paul belongs to the Hutu ethnic group, while his wife, Tatiana, is a Tutsi. Due to the remnants of colonialism, hatred between these two ethnic groups had been stirred to a boiling point by extremist broadcasters and politicians. On one day in April 1994, the Rwandan president's plane was shot down, and a premeditated genocide erupted instantly. Neighbors who once appeared kind suddenly transformed into machete-wielding murderers, and bloodshed spread through the streets. At first, Paul believed his connections and the hotel's international reputation would keep them safe. However, as neighbors flooded into the hotel seeking refuge, the United Nations peacekeepers withdrew, and global powers evacuated only foreign tourists, leaving Rwandans behind in hell. Paul realized his hotel had become the last sanctuary in a radius of dozens of miles. Not only did he have to protect his family, but he also had to shelter over 1,000 refugees he did not know. He had to utilize every connection and resource he had ever accumulated and navigate between ruthless rebel generals and apathetic bureaucrats. Just when he thought bribery and money might secure the final evacuation list, devastating news arrived. The international community had completely abandoned them. The hotel's supplies were cut off, and the mobs outside were ready for their ultimate assault. Paul found himself on the brink of life and death, forced to make the most painful decision. Should he leave with his family or stay behind to share the fate of the 1,268 desperate souls? One of the first thought-provoking aspects of this film is the exploration of ordinary kindness and professional redemption. Paul's character is moving precisely because he is not an idealist at the start. He's a thorough realist, even somewhat slick and pragmatic. He uses bribery as a means to get things done, seeing it as merely a business tool. However, when society spirals into madness and genocide becomes commonplace evil, Paul's ordinary kindness, surprisingly, erupts with astonishing power. This power stems from his professional habits. He insists that the refugees remain clean and demands that the staff maintain hotel standards. These acts of maintaining dignity in the midst of hellish chaos are, in fact, a profound form of resistance. It sends a clear message to the outside world: this is a land of civilization. These are not insects but lives that demand respect. You can take away our lives, but you cannot take away our professionalism and dignity as human beings. These everyday acts of resilience are often more effective in saving souls than grand slogans. In our daily lives, we often feel our jobs are ordinary, our tasks meaningless. But have you considered that when crisis strikes, when you're in an environment where rules collapse, the little professional skills you possess, the small courtesies you extend to others, might be the last threads holding civilization together? Paul teaches us that maintaining normalcy in absolute darkness is a form of great heroism. The second theme of this film is the indifference of the international community and the guilt of being a bystander. This is perhaps the most suffocating and contemplative aspect of the movie. There's one particularly heartbreaking scene. Joaquin Phoenix plays a war correspondent who risks his life capturing footage of the massacre. Paul thanks him, saying that without these images, the world would never know what happened here. But the journalist responds coldly, "I think that when people see these images, they'll say, 'Oh my God, that's terrible,' and then go on eating their dinner." This line is a brutal prediction of the modern media age. We've seen so much suffering that compassion has become cheap and fleeting. The film also portrays the helplessness of the UN peacekeeping forces. A colonel angrily tells Paul, "We're not here to keep peace, we're here to pick up corpses." When Western evacuation operations began, and white soldiers boarded trucks with pet dogs while crying Rwandan children were left in the rain, the movie tore away the hypocritical facade of so-called international humanitarianism. It challenges each viewer: does life truly have a hierarchy? Why are some forms of suffering merely a backdrop in the eyes of certain people? This line of questioning resonates strongly even today. In an era of algorithm-driven recommendations and information bubbles, have we lost genuine empathy for others' pain? When you see suffering, will you, like the Western audience in the film, merely sigh and continue enjoying your dinner? The third theme is about rebuilding trust and love in despair, which is the heart of the film's healing and inspiration. During those 100 days, the hotel became a shared destiny for people across racial divides. People who initially distrusted or even hated each other began sharing limited water and food within the hotel's walls. Paul's relationship with his wife, Tatiana, serves as the emotional anchor of the entire film. Even at the most desperate moment when Paul had prepared for a family-wide suicide, he still worked tirelessly to make his wife believe in hope. This sense of healing doesn't come from external rescue but from the warmth maintained between individuals even in extreme fear. Later in the film, there's a poignant moment when Paul must retrieve supplies, forcing him to walk along a road full of corpses, the darkest point in his life. That crushing psychological collapse was devastating. However, upon returning to the hotel and seeing the expectant eyes of the children and the unwavering hands of his wife, he straightened his tie and put on his clean suit once again. This process of self-repair tells us, love is not some illusory sentiment. Love is the umbrella you hold up for others in hopelessness. As long as the most basic care between people persists, the fire of civilization will not be extinguished. After showing extreme ugliness, the film still gives us confidence in humanity. It tells us that redemption doesn't always come from heroes but can come from every ordinary person who refuses to become numb. Every tear shed when a Rwandan child reunites with their family is the most powerful rebuttal to the madness of racism. This form of healing, born of blood and tears, urges us to consider, how can we preserve the small sanctuary of humanity we hold in our hearts in this still conflicted world? Paul once told the desperate refugees, we must shame them, show them that even if they don't help us, we've never lost our dignity as human beings. This classic line resonates because it reveals that in the face of a brutal regime, the only and greatest weapon of the weak is moral integrity. Another heartbreaking line comes from the UN colonel, "We're just spectators, Paul. You're not even worth a single vote from the international community." This line harshly exposes the cruelty of geopolitics. It's profound because it shatters all naive fantasies and forces us to confront the real logic of the world. As we reflect on this discussion, we find that Hotel Rwanda is truly a mirror. It reveals the baseness of some individuals and the greatness of others, but it reveals most of all the silence of the majority. Paul spent his life wanting to be a respectable manager, but fate pushed him to the edge of a cliff. With just a bit of his cunning, his professionalism, and his love for his family, he pieced together a lifeline that saved 1,000 people. We don't have to wait for extreme conditions to discuss kindness. Kindness should be shown in every ordinary day, through respect for rules, professionalism, and empathy for our neighbors. Looking back at this episode, we've talked about the heroism of ordinary people, the numbness of bystanders, and the dignity found in despair. Hopefully, this film doesn't only bring you tears but also inspires deep reflection about the weight of life. Finally, I want to leave you with a question. If you were standing in the rain as an abandoned Rwandan or were a foreign tourist leaving on the truck, how would you perceive that hotel gate? In this still turbulent world, how should we define our empathy? If you have any thoughts about this film or that historical period, feel free to share them in the comments. Every voice you share is a small yet important response to that silent history. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to like and subscribe to support Delusion. Alright, that's all for this episode. Wishing you good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Delusion. See you in the next episode.